Okay.
You want to be in a video? As I said in the last video, a lot of stuff is not nuts and bolts on this thing. I want this video to kind of tell you how my whole last week went. It didn't touch a ratchet or wrench all week on the phone. Just administrative stuff on this thing, but I guess it's all part of it. You about to get your finger over the thing?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. And getting all my figures together for Shark Tank, getting all that ready. Let me get the name right here. Low Volume Motor Vehicle Manufacturing Act of 2015. That's a deal at SEMA, some of the bigger Factory 5, Congressman Gene Green from just a little south of me down in Houston sponsored the bill, and it basically says that we can build 325 cars a year without crash testing them and all the other prohibitive expensive bumper testing and all that would ordinarily happen. I'm already good. I have 900 serial numbers. I can fall under that, or I can fall under this. So I'm waiting on that bill to happen. Then we can consider building 325 cars a year. Well, in doing my homework for what I'm going to say on Shark Tank, I knew that I had seen 325 a year. But I also knew on the bill itself it said 500 a year. So I started researching what was going on. There's a couple of websites where you can look at the congressional records and stuff like that. And any bill like that, it goes to the committees, and it's a long process before it's voted on the floor. You can follow it through that process. I'm looking at that bill, and it says 500. But I know that everything said 325. So I called Congressman Gene Green's office in Washington and said, "Hey, what's the deal? I am certain that this thing said 325. And the apparently intern there tells me it's a moot point. That bill died in committee in August. I said, you know, that was going to be my next question. All the media says it's passed, and yet I can't find anything that says it made it out of committee and was approved and was passed. He said, no, the bill's dead. I'm thinking to myself, why in the world does SEMA have a seminar at the SEMA show in November to tell us the ramifications of this bill if it died months before that? Something's not right here, but I'm starting to panic. I called Fran at Race Car Replicas. I called Steve Temple at the magazines. I called other kit car manufacturers. I thought, well, let me call Stuart Goswine at SEMA. He'll know what's going on. Stuart's their legal department there. SEMA does a lot of lobbying, a lot of work in Washington on legislature that affects us in the automotive industry. Stuart says, calm down. Here's what's happened. Yes, it did die in committee, but it was attached as part of the 1,000-page transportation bill that was passed. It's about 8 or 10 pages of that, and it was passed. When it was attached to the transportation bill, it did go down to 325 from 500. But it is passed and it is done. I said, is there a paper trail of that? And he said, no, you look at the congressional record and it just shows that it died in committee. I said, okay. Several questions answered. I said, I probably started a mini panic here. And he said, yeah, you're not the first person that's called me this morning. I said, I apologize for that. We got that straight. He said, while I got you on the phone, let me tell you some other things about the bill. This was 2015 when it was supposed to have died in committee. It was passed. any bill, any law, I don't care if it's just a law that says, yeah, you get a driver's license. Well, they turn that law over to the department that handles that, the DPS, whatever, and they are responsible for writing the form for application for a driver's license. That form's not attached to the congressional bill. That may be a bad example because a driver's license state and that's federal, but you get the idea. So they turned it over to EPA and to the National Highway Safety Traffic Administration, whatever. Said you have a year to write all of the details of this and implement it. Their year was up this last December and it didn't happen. They didn't do it. They haven't done it yet. They don't know when they're going to do it. So we don't have a bill yet. We don't have it implemented yet. They say they're going to do it right away or soon. But compounding that problem, the Donald has put a freeze on any new legislation, any new regulation, anything. This is kind of finishing old legislation, but it actually falls under that category now. So even though our new transportation secretary, Elaine Chao, I think, Elaine Chao, is all in favor of this bill, and even though we think that we have a very favorable climate to pursue a bill, continue pursuing this bill in Congress and in the government in general, Elaine Chao is not sworn in yet as Transportation Secretary, so she can do nothing about it. And technically, even if the two agencies had the procedure done, they can't introduce it because there's a freeze on that right now. So this is all conversations back and forth and days of conversation and so forth and so on. That's where we're at on this bill. I do not want to go to Shark Tank and tell them, well, we've got a government bill. It's happened, it's law, but it hasn't happened yet. So I'm waiting to hear from that. Stewart says one more thing while I'm at it. You must be smog compliant for that bill. As of right now, the LS3 E-Rod engine from GM is the only smog compliant engine for that. We expect Ford and Chrysler to have one. They can't not have one, but at this point, that E-Rod engine is the only eligible engine. Well, SEMA found out 2 weeks ago that CARB, the California Air Research Board, who was charged with making it all smog compliant and so forth for this bill, the E-Rod engine is CARB compliant, but that CARB compliancy expired in 2013. Just a detail here, but here's back and forth on trying to get an engine for this thing. It took another couple of days between my existing motor builder, between GM, between Scott & Dickey, between the GM engineers. What are we doing? How are we doing it? What's going on with all that? And yeah, it's going to get done, and it's just an oversight, and that'll be recertified. But it was days on the phone. Final thing on that deal. Oh, in all of this process, I called my congressman, Kenny Marchant, that is the congressman from my district. And I said, hey, I know bills can be reintroduced. Has SEMA just allowed this thing to die? Can we introduce it? What's going on? And he said, yeah, it died in committee. So now I have 2 congressmen telling me it died in committee. Relay that back to SEMA, to Stewart. And he says, okay, now that we've got all this resolved, now that we know where everything's at, now that you're progressing forward, now that you've wasted several days on the phone, now that you got it all straight, would you do me a favor, and would you call the sponsor of this bill's office, Gene Green, back, and tell him that it did not die in committee? And I said, I would be very glad to. So, kind of a rant today, but just wanted to kind of give you an idea that Again, it is not all ratchets and wrenches on this thing. That's how my weeks went. That's the progress for the week. Done.
Done?